These first two examples in section 7.5 focus on interpretation rather than on the actual kind of math things that we're going to use to determine these problems. So what we're going to do here and what I've done here is I've just kind of written everything out in advance, and that way I can go through and talk about and explain it rather than focus on the actual handwriting part of the example. So for example 1, extracting natural gas through hydraulic fracturing or fracking is a controversial practice. Residents in 2 states with large natural gas deposits were polled to determine whether they favored or opposed fracking. Let P1 represent the proportion of Michigan residents who favor fracking, and P2 represent the proportion of Pennsylvania residents who favor fracking. A 95% confidence interval for the population proportion is negative 0.0184, 0.117. Interpret the confidence interval. Does this interval indicate that there is a difference in support of fracking between these 2 states? So the first thing I went ahead and did is just like other problems in previous sections, we start with the list of what we know and what we want to know. Right, so we were told specifically in this problem that P1 is our proportion of Michigan in favor. P2 was our proportion of Pennsylvania in favor. Our confidence level is 95%. Our confidence interval is negative 0.0184 to 0.0117. And what we want to know is 0 included in our interval? So interpret our confidence interval. The confidence interval includes 0. So if we go back to our table on the previous page, if our confidence interval contains zeros, the population proportions may be equal. Right? So we cannot rule out the possibility that the proportion of people in each state favoring fracking is the same. Right? So since 0 is included in the interval, we cannot rule out the possibility that the proportions are the same. Does this interval indicate that there is a difference in support between these 2 states? We conclude that there is no significant difference because 0 is in our interval. So our interpretation and does this show a difference in support? Basically the same question that's being asked. Is 0 included in this interval? And it is. So we can conclude that there is no significant difference. We cannot rule out the possibility that the population proportion in each state is the same. In our interpretation, it's also worth noting that the positive 0.117 means it's not implausible or unlikely for the percentage of Michigan residents to be 11.7% above Pennsylvania. The negative 0.0184 means that it's not implausible for the percentage of Michigan residents to be 1.84% below Pennsylvania residents. Excuse me. So the positive value means that again, P1 could be greater than P2, P1 being Michigan, greater than Pennsylvania by 11.7%. And the negative value means that P1, Michigan, could be less than P2, which is Pennsylvania, and as much as 1.84% below the residents of Pennsylvania. So these types of interpretations, these types of questions are going to be some of the types of things that you're going to see in your homework as you start going through this section.